Back, you're still watching SABC News. Now, the new IAAF regulations that will hamper Caster Semenya somewhat in competing in athletics will come into force on the 1st of November. World Athletics controlling body has issued much-awaited regulations for female athletes with differences of sex development, and they could have a huge impact on South Africa's World 800-metre champion. Sports scientist Ross Tucker joins us now from Cape Town. Thanks very much, Ross, for joining us, and welcome to the program. Your immediate thoughts on what the IAAF has announced today? I suppose it wasn't a surprise, but disappointment for South Africa and Caster Semenya, no doubt.
Yes, a temporary disappointment, certainly, and perhaps the start of a, legal battle might be a slightly strong word, a process by which they may be able to fight this policy and eventually have it overturned, as has happened before. As you say, not a surprise, because going back to 2015, when the previous policy was overturned by the courts, we already knew then that the IAAF would come back with something, and that there would be an attempt by them to try and regulate this based on evidence. And that's basically what this is. So I see it as the latest installment in an ongoing saga, for want of a better word. And I think the question now is, how does Semenya or someone else respond?
All right, so, as South Africans, we're probably more emotionally attached to this story than scientifically so. So let's try and take the emotion out of this and speak just on the science of what's happening here. So what we know for sure is athletes are not allowed to inject themselves with testosterone because it's deemed to be performance enhancing. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So testosterone is a very powerful hormone which has many beneficial effects related to performance on the body. So that's the reason that it is A, disallowed for doping purposes, and B, the subject of some controversy, because one of the key biological differences between men and women is the level of testosterone, and people who have very high testosterone level, men who have higher testosterone levels are biologically different from women with performance implications.
All right, so the challenge then they have is they're saying that, for women, naturally, they have testosterone levels of something in the order of 0.12 to about 1.8 nanomoles per liter in the blood. The IAAF is saying that she has to reduce it down to 5, which is still quite above the average. So anything beyond that, is that really a serious amount of testosterone to have, and can it affect performance?
That is a simple question with a complicated answer. The reality is that testosterone does affect performance within an individual. So we know from various studies and various cases, if someone was to lower their testosterone, let's say it starts at 20 and they reduce it to 5, it will get worse. Their performance level will drop. So within an individual, there's no doubt that the level of testosterone they have is an important criteria for performance. The IAAF are trying to do is to use testosterone as a way to effectively, quote-unquote, level the playing field. And it turns out to be quite a clumsy way to do that, because the difference between one person who has high testosterone and another person with low testosterone is much smaller than you might think. So they're trying to use it as a way to regulate fairness, but unfortunately the science is not as clean as it would, as they would have hoped it to be.
All right. So the other complication here is the 1,500 meters. That wasn't really on the radar when they were doing the tests to identify those races that could be compromised with an elevated level of testosterone.
Yeah, more than that even. It's not so much that it wasn't on the radar. They tested it, they looked at it, because they did this big study in 11 and 13 where they compared performances in every single event. And they basically asked, do women with very high testosterone perform better than women with very low testosterone in all the events? The 1,500 that found no difference. In other words, there's no benefit of testosterone in the 1,500-meter event. So the fact that they've now added it to events which are going to be regulated by this policy is what makes people say, hang on, it looks like a Caster Semenya policy. I don't think that it is that. I understand that South Africans are looking at this with maybe a little bit more emotive perspective and reacting in that way. But the IAAF, in that regard, seem to me anyway quite thin ice, because the question is, what's the evidence? Their own evidence is that 1,500 is not affected, yet they've added it anyway, and people are asking why.
So if we follow this argument of raised testosterone levels being perhaps contributory to performance, what about men that are born with higher than normal testosterone levels? They're not being brought into question, but might that be an unfair advantage that they have?
That is, when you look at the court case that was held in 2015, that turned out to be one of the crucial aspects of the whole case, because, as you point out, the policy applied only to women, and the result of that is that it needed very good evidence to support. And the thing is that evidence didn't exist. So when the IAAF were asked why the policy did not apply to men, their argument was that men are already competing in the class that's got the high testosterone to begin with, and so therefore it doesn't need to be regulated. In the same way that there's no weight limit on a heavyweight boxer, because that's already the heaviest class of boxer. So that was put forward as the argument. People will have differing views on that. My position there is that because men are, as the IAAF say, I generally side with them on that one, is that because men are already the class of competition where testosterone is theoretically unlimited, there was no need to impose a ceiling for that category.
All right, and perhaps as a final question, you did say that chances are her times will slow down a little bit. Do you have any idea, can you hazard a guess just how many seconds she might lose over 800 meters, for example, or the 1,500?
It is to some extent guesswork, because obviously we're in relatively uncharted territories. But if we go back and look at precedents for this, and in the past we know that athletes have had to lower their testosterone because that's what the policy used to be. We also know that when men lower their testosterone levels, their performance levels drop. And that drop is anything between about 4-7%. Now, what that means is that for an 800-meter runner, you're looking at between 4 and 7 seconds that she would probably slow down. And based on Semenya from 2013 and 14, I would estimate that she would slow down by between 5 and 6 seconds.
And that might put her out of medal contention and certainly not breaking records. Ross, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your insights on this particular case, which I've got a feeling has still got quite a way to run. Thanks very much, Ross Tucker.